My wife secretly had an affair with her boss, and it turned into a $500, $0 embezzlement scheme. Then she filed for divorce claiming I was hiding assets, but I just found out she's been laundering money through our property titles. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Emily, turned out to be a total piece of work. Honestly, I thought we had a pretty normal life. Married for 8 years, 2 kids, decent jobs, the usual routine. But then, out of nowhere, everything started unraveling. It's like I was living in some bad movie where the plot twists keep hitting you when you least expect them. The first sign was small, little things that didn't seem like a big deal at the time. Emily was acting weird, secretive even. She'd hide her phone more often, lock it when she thought I wasn't looking, and suddenly she was more interested in her. Work emails at night, which was strange because she used to be pretty open about her day. But the real shocker came when I decided to do a little digging. I'd always been cautious about snooping, but something about her recent behavior pushed me over the edge. One night I noticed her phone was left unattended on the kitchen table. I couldn't help myself. I picked it up and started going through her messages. That's when I saw the texts, flirty, suggestive, and clearly not work-related. They were with her boss, Mark. I knew Mark professionally, but I had no idea they were this close, especially not in that way. The messages weren't just innocent flirtation, they were downright explicit sometimes. I saw plans for secret meetups, late-night calls, and even references to keeping this between us, like it was some clandestine affair. My stomach sank. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I kept reading, hoping I was mistaken, but everything pointed to something much darker. I decided to look at her phone history, and it was worse. There were bank transfers, coded messages about money laundering, and even references to a large embezzlement scheme. Apparently, Emily had been funneling money through our property titles, property I thought was our investment, our security. Turns out, she was laundering hundreds of thousands of dollars all behind my back. The whole thing was a mess of lies, betrayal, and greed. I couldn't believe I was married to someone capable of this. I felt numb, like the ground had shifted beneath me. How could she lie to my face for so long? How could she cheat on me with her boss, then turn around and use our assets to cover her tracks? It was like some twisted conspiracy, and I was caught right in the middle. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew that once I did, everything would change forever. I wasn't naive. I'd seen enough movies to know that betrayal like this doesn't just blow over. I was angry, hurt, and confused. How could she do this to us? To me? I had no idea what the next step was, but I knew I had to find out the truth, no matter what it cost. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind kept replaying the texts, the bank transfers, and that sinking feeling of betrayal. I couldn't focus on anything else. I knew I needed to confront Emily, but I also knew that this wasn't going to be a simple talk. It was going to be a showdown, and I had to be prepared. I spent hours going over everything I found, trying to piece together what her game was and how deep it ran. When Emily came home that afternoon, she was her usual bitchy self, throwing around her attitude the moment she stepped through the door. She looked at me with that fake smile, acting like everything was normal. She always was good at hiding her true feelings, better than I ever gave her credit for, but I wasn't fooled anymore. I was done playing nice. I called her into the living room, and I didn't waste any time. "Emily, I need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She rolled her eyes and sat down, crossing her arms. "What's there to talk about? If you have something to say it." I took a deep breath. "I know about the affair, the texts with Mark, the late-night meetups, and the money. Everything." Her eyes widened for a moment, then she scoffed. "You're crazy, you're just paranoid. Those texts mean nothing, I swear. You're blowing things out of proportion." I shook my head. "No, Emily, it's not just about the affair, it's the money, the bank transfers, the laundering. You've been stealing from us. How long has this been going on? How much money have you taken?" She looked defensive, then suddenly angry. "You don't understand, it's not what you think. Mark's just a friend, and the money, it's for a project I was working on. You have no idea how hard I've been working and you accuse me of this. You're so quick to believe the worst." I stared at her, feeling a mix of rage and heartbreak. "Don't lie to me, Emily. I know about the embezzlement. I know you've been laundering money through our property titles. I found the evidence. You're a liar, a cheat, and a thief. I can't believe I married someone capable of this." Her face twisted into a sneer. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Accusing me of everything. Maybe you're the one hiding something. Maybe you're just too blind to see the truth. I've been covering for us, making sure we're taken care of. You're just too stupid to see it." That was the moment I realized her lies had no end. She was convincing herself that she was the victim, that she was doing all this for us. But I could see through her bullshit. She was a manipulator, a liar, and a thief. I felt my blood boil. All the love I had for her, all the trust we built over the years, was crumbling in that instant. She stormed out of the room, yelling that I had no right to accuse her without proof, but I had enough proof. I knew she was guilty as hell. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, but I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to figure out my next move, whether to fight for the marriage or cut her out completely. All I knew was that my world had turned upside down in less than a day, and nothing would ever be the same again. After the confrontation, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My head was spinning, and every time I thought about Emily's lies, a fresh wave of anger and betrayal hit me. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind, so trusting, that I didn't see what was happening right under my nose. The more I dug into her financial records, the more I uncovered. She'd been laundering money through our property titles for months, maybe longer. It was like some elaborate game she was running, and I was the last to know. I decided I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to come clean. I needed to get ahead of her, gather more evidence, and figure out exactly how deep this rabbit hole went. That night, I hired a private investigator. I didn't want to believe she could be capable of all this, but I had to be sure. Turns out, she'd been meeting with Mark in secret, often late at night at some fancy hotels. The pie even caught her on camera with her hand on Mark's leg, whispering in his ear like they were hiding something more than just office flirtation. Meanwhile, I was trying to stay calm, but inside I was boiling. The betrayal ran so deep I could taste it. I kept asking myself what I'd done wrong, how I hadn't seen the signs earlier. I'd been so focused on building a life with her that I missed the fact she was tearing it apart from the inside. I thought about the money she'd stolen, the lies she'd told, and the fact that she'd tried to manipulate me into thinking I was the one hiding assets. Every time I thought about her lying in bed next to me, pretending everything was fine, I felt sick. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time with even more evidence. I waited until she got home from work the next day, and I laid everything out on the table. I told her I had proof of her affair, her laundering scheme, and her manipulations. She looked stunned for a moment, then her bitchy smirk returned. "Oh, so now you're the detective, huh?" she sneered. "You think you can just accuse me and get away with it? You're nothing but a jealous, insecure little man. I've been doing this for us. I've been making sure we're taken care of, something you clearly don't understand." I felt my fists clench, but I kept my voice steady. "Emily, I've had enough. I'm done being played. I found the bank transfers, thousands going into accounts I didn't even know existed. I found the hotel receipts with your name on them. You've been lying and cheating and stealing from us. I want you out of this house. I want nothing to do with your lies anymore." She laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "You think you're some kind of hero. You're just a stupid, naive husband who never saw what was happening. I don't need you. I don't need your stupid house or your pathetic money. I've got my own plans, and they don't involve you anymore." That was the moment I realized she was beyond saving. She'd spun her web of lies so tightly that it was almost impossible to see where she ended and her deception began. She was a master manipulator, and I was just another pawn in her game. I'd trusted her for so long, and now I saw her for what she truly was: a selfish, lying bitch who only cared about herself and her greed. I knew I had to take control before she drained us completely. I decided to consult a lawyer to see what my rights were and how to protect what was left of our assets. I also reached out to the bank and flagged the suspicious accounts. I couldn't let her keep laundering money through our property titles. I had to act fast. It was a dark, confusing time. I was furious, heartbroken, and betrayed, but I refused to let her destroy everything I'd worked for. I was starting to see that this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about her trying to wipe us out financially, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Over the next few days, I threw myself into action. Every moment I wasn't at work or with the kids, I was digging deeper into her financial mess. I hired a forensic accountant to trace every dollar, every transfer, every shady property deed she'd manipulated. The more I uncovered, the more I realized this was no ordinary affair. Emily had been running a full-scale embezzlement scheme, funneling hundreds of thousands, no, probably over 500,000 through our assets, laundering it through real estate and shell companies. I couldn't believe I'd been living with a criminal. Meanwhile, Emily kept up her act. She'd throw tantrums, accuse me of trying to ruin her, and insist she was doing everything for us. She even had the nerve to say I was the one hiding assets, which was laughable now. I knew she'd been laundering money through our property titles, turning our family home into some kind of bank account for her illegal activities. That realization hit me hard. Our home, the place where I thought our family was safe, was now a part of her criminal scheme. One night I decided I had enough. I was going to confront her again, but this time with everything laid out. I told her I was going to the police, that I had enough evidence to expose her and her boss, Mark. She freaked out, of course. Started yelling, crying, calling me a monster. She begged me not to ruin her life, that she was doing it all for us, for our future. But I saw through her tears, her lies, her manipulations. I wasn't going to be her pawn anymore. I also started secretly recording her conversations. Every time she talked about her plans, her schemes, I made sure I had audio proof. I knew she'd deny everything if I confronted her directly, but recordings don't lie. I was preparing for the worst, knowing I might have to take legal action, get a restraining order, or even consider divorce. The betrayal had cut so deep I couldn't see any way back to normalcy. All I knew was that I had to protect what little was left of my sanity and my assets. One day, I found a stack of receipts tucked away in her purse: hotel bills, cash withdrawals, coded messages. It was clear she was planning her escape, maybe even trying to leave the country. I realized then that I had to act fast before she disappeared with everything. I contacted an attorney, told him everything, and started the process of freezing her bank accounts and placing a lien on the property. I wasn't going to let her walk away with a dime of our money, especially after all she'd done. The emotional toll was enormous. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all the signs, how I could have trusted her for so long. Every time I looked at her, I saw the betrayal, the greed, the lies. I felt a mixture of rage and sadness. Rage that she'd hurt me and our family so deeply, and sadness for the woman I once thought I knew. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to cut her out completely if I wanted to save what was left of my life. I had to start over, rebuild from the wreckage she left behind. The hardest part was knowing I'd never see her the same way again, that the woman I married was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal meetings, financial audits, and endless sleepless nights. I was determined to get to the bottom of everything, every single dollar, every shady deal, every lie she'd spun. My lawyer advised me to prepare for a messy divorce, especially given the amount of money involved and her attempts to hide and launder assets. He told me to expect her to fight tooth and nail, probably try to accuse me of hiding assets myself, just to muddy the waters. But I already knew she was guilty of everything. Her lies had been laid bare, and I had enough evidence to take her down. One night, I finally sat her down for what I knew would be the last serious conversation. I told her I was done playing her game. I'd gathered enough proof to expose her, and I was going to do just that. I told her she could either come clean and cooperate, or I'd take her to court and make sure she paid for everything she'd done. Her face twisted with anger, then she started crying, big, dramatic tears that she knew would tug at my heart. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, greedy liar who'd ruin everything for her own gain. She tried to spin her usual stories, claiming she was doing everything for us, that Mark was just a friend, and that the money laundering was for a business idea she had. She insisted she was innocent, that I was just jealous and paranoid. But I'd heard enough. I played the recordings I'd made, her talking about her plans to leave the country, her conversations with Mark about moving the money, her attempts to transfer assets into fake accounts. I watched her try to deny it, try to pretend she was the victim, but the truth was clear. She'd been planning her escape, laundering money and lying through her teeth. I decided I couldn't stay in this marriage anymore. I couldn't trust her, and frankly, I didn't want to. I filed for divorce, and I made sure every asset was protected. I wanted her out of my life and out of my house. I also started working with the authorities, providing them with all the evidence I had collected. I wanted her to face the consequences, whatever they might be. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice. She had betrayed everything, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The emotional fallout was intense. I felt a mixture of relief and heartbreak. Relief because I was finally free from her lies and manipulations, but heartbreak because I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all the signs, how I didn't see the greed and selfishness beneath her pretty face. I also felt anger at her for destroying our family, for risking everything we built together. But I knew deep down that this was the best decision I could make. I had to protect my kids, my future, and what little integrity I had left. Moving forward, I was determined to rebuild my life, alone, but with a clear conscience and a new sense of strength I never knew I had. Now, looking back, I realize how much I underestimated her. Emily was never the person I thought she was. The woman I married, the woman I loved and trusted, she was just a facade, a clever mask hiding someone completely different. The betrayal cut so deep I honestly thought I'd never recover from it, but I did. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. For my kids, for myself, to keep what little dignity I had left. Getting out of that mess was the hardest thing I've ever done. I lost a lot: money, trust, my sense of security. But I also gained clarity. I learned that people can hide their true selves behind a pretty face, behind lies and manipulations. And I learned that sometimes you have to rip everything apart to rebuild something better. I've started over slowly but surely, with a new perspective on what really matters. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: trust is precious, but it's fragile. Never ignore the signs of deceit, and don't let anyone manipulate you into thinking you're the problem. Be vigilant. Protect what's yours. And when the truth finally comes out, don't be afraid to walk away, even if it hurts, because staying in a lie only prolongs the pain. I'm still healing, still trying to piece my life back together, but I'm stronger now. I know what I'm capable of and what I deserve. And I want anyone else going through something similar to know you're not alone. Trust your instincts, gather your evidence, and don't settle for a life built on lies. Sometimes the only way forward is to cut the poison out. And that's exactly what I did.